This is Virginia Trioli on ABC Radio Melbourne.
Good morning, great to have your company, and Shana Tova to the Jewish community for their new year. And I'm sorry that the illegal all-day gathering that's being reported this morning at Ripponlea is the shadow cast over your New Year celebrations. If you live or work or have a connection to that part of Ripponlea, if you know anything about the synagogue or those who might attend, or anything about a really raucous and, in the end, dangerous gathering in the last 24 hours and overnight, and you'd like to comment or share anything with us, give me a call, 1300 222 774. In a moment, I'm going to share with you the experience of the overnight cameraman who was there, who was assaulted as part of covering that illegal gathering. He's in the Alfred Hospital right now, and he's spoken to St Kilda Police, and he wants to go ahead with pressing charges. He's not well enough to speak to you because he's being concussed after being struck on the head by someone who was associated with the gathering there. He spoke to me. He says he doesn't feel well enough to go on air this morning, and I've got to say he sounded a bit wobbly. So he says he's happy for me to relay to you his story. I'll tell you about that in just a moment.
Police are investigating a religious gathering and assault in Melbourne's inner southeast. Numerous fines will be issued after a group gathered in breach of lockdown restrictions to observe Jewish New Year. A news camera operator remains in hospital after being struck in the head during a confrontation last night.
You're with Virginia. Call 1300 222 774 or text 0437 774 774.
The Jewish Community Council of Victoria can't speak to you this morning because it is Jewish New Year. And so they're not working, and they're not using the phones, and they're not using computers and the like, as is traditional. But they're as dismayed as everybody else by what they witnessed, what seemed to be an all-day gathering at that synagogue there in Ripponlea, of up to 100 worshippers believed to be marking Jewish New Year, in what was clearly a breach of COVID-19 restrictions, and then a very, very rowdy exit from that synagogue at around about 8:15 last night. Now, I'm going to talk to you in just a moment about what one overnight cameraman both witnessed and recorded, and I've had a look at his vision this morning, and also then told me from his hospital bed in the Alfred Hospital after he was struck on the head and then concussed after the exiting from the synagogue turned very angry and very rowdy. But this is a statement from the Jewish Community Council of Victoria given to us this morning. The JCCV expresses its strong disappointment in and condemns the actions of a small group of people who appear to have not followed COVID restrictions. The organisation, together with other communal organisations, have gone to great lengths to inform and encourage the community to follow the rules at all times, stay home and only celebrate Jewish holidays, including the New Year, with the people you live with. While staying apart keeps us safe, you can still reach out to family and friends on the phone and online. And then this quote: "The actions of a few do not represent the vast majority of our community, who have celebrated Rosh Hashanah at home only with the people with whom they live, and just like the wider community, continue to follow the rules," which is something that we've heard similarly from other parts of the community who are identified as a group, and you might see some breaches by one, and then the phone calls go into the community leaders saying you need to condemn the actions of all because we've seen just some break the rules. And so I really do feel for them this morning, just like as you may have for, say, the Muslim community that's been targeted that way from time to time, and also the ultra-Orthodox Greek community as well, which has been identified in that way from time to time. So let me just make that clear, that it's always unfortunate that they somehow have to step in and speak for all. But they have been clear in condemning the actions of this group. Well, last night at around 8:15, when what seemed to be that all-day gathering finally came to an end, there was a cameraman who was working as a part of a pool group and therefore shooting footage for all of the news services overnight, who was jostled, he told me, and he spoke to me from his Alfred Hospital bed. He'd been in there since last night. He came and deposited his film and put it into the system, but then started to feel very, very poorly after he was struck on the head by someone who he said seemed to be associated with that synagogue gathering there, who was guarding the door at the entrance the back entrance to the synagogue in the laneway. So he went into the Alfred Hospital. He's had a brain scan taken. He says he's slurring his speech a bit and not feeling terribly well. So he's in there waiting for the results. And he said he was happy for me to tell you what he experienced. So he was jostled. People put their hats over the camera and were pushing the camera. He said to one gentleman, please stop pushing me, and then felt a blow to his head. He's spoken to St Kilda Police, and he has reported the incident, and they're going to go on and do some further interviews. And he says he does want to make this an official complaint, because he says he feels like he needs to be able to go out and do his job without being beaten over the head, which I think is a fair enough point to make. He also just made the point, which is separate to this, but which is also something to ponder and something you might like to reflect on as well, that he feels less and less like he's able to go out with a camera without people feeling more and more like they have the right to go up to him and abuse him or insult him or push him or hit the camera as well. So I guess it just points to a real breakdown in relations at the moment between the media and the wider public, which is a crying shame as well. And I guess there's some origins of that have been coming down the line, and I would argue perhaps from the United States for some time as well. He's okay. He says he'll stay in there for some time until he gets to speak to the police, but that's at least one assault arising from that. Interestingly, we have a reporter down there, Stephanie Ferrier, who's been speaking to the community. Community members have been coming up to her all morning and saying interesting things as well. Stephanie Ferrier, our ABC reporter, good morning to you.
Good morning, Virginia.
It's a rather alarming story told by the cameraman overnight, Stephanie.
Yes, and this is the difficulty that we are facing, I guess, during these COVID times. And as you mentioned, the fact that, sometimes this sort of situation does erupt into violence when you have anti-lockdown protests or in these sorts of situations when people are breaching the Chief Health Officer's directions on gatherings and not abiding by those restrictions. So one thing that I can say is that obviously a lot of people are down here this morning. On any other given day, it's a beautiful morning down here in the little beautiful Ripponlea shopping strip, which is, teeming with people just doing the right thing, just coming down, getting coffees and things like that. And unfortunately, we still do also have a police presence here as well, because they are guarding all entry and exit points of this synagogue just as a bit of a presence here. But the people that have come up and had a chat to me, they've been really at pains to point out that this isn't representative of the wider Jewish community, that they say that, as a result of all of this, they're copping a lot of flack from people, a lot of anti-Semitic comments and things like that as well. And they want to just say that, this is a very small minority that we're talking about that is involved in this incident last night, that everybody else is, really frustrated, of course, like we all are with lockdown, but they're all doing the right thing, and it's just difficult to see these sorts of things being highlighted in the media. So they wanted to make that point. Unfortunately, they didn't want to come on camera and say that, but they have been coming across constantly around the times that I've been doing live crosses down here, and just wanting to mention that this is a really tight-knit, thriving community.
Well, you heard the comment that was the official response there from the Jewish Community Council of Victoria, yes. That is, and they were using that phrase as well, that it's a small group of people. I've got text messages like this from Stephen in Preston East. I don't call 100 people a few. It's a super spreader event, and I hope they all get caught for their selfish act. But this is part of what was going on last night. Let me just play a little bit of this to you, Stephanie, and to everyone listening this morning. Cassie Morgan, the Age reporter, posted this bit of vision of the synagogue patrons singing in the alleyway last night around about 8:15 when they finally left the building. And it's just not what you want to see or experience or hear. It's not what anyone should be doing at a time of lockdown, which just rubs salt in the wound, Stephanie.
Yes, it certainly does. And we heard from our cameraman down there, Kyle Harley, who was down there earlier in the evening, and he was saying before the situation obviously turned violent, he was also copping a lot of abuse as well, a lot of verbal abuse from people. These were other members of the community that had come down to support the people who had been inside. So there were not just the ones that were in the synagogue waiting it out, but also some of the members of that Orthodox community that had come down as well to support the people that were inside. So, this is we don't know who that singing was involved with, whether or not they were people that were gathering to wait for people to come out, or they were the people that had come out. But it is an issue that obviously everybody wants to be able to go out and do these sorts of gatherings at the moment, but we can't. And police have been quite firm in this, and they have said that they've gathered names of people that were down there, and they will all the adults that attended this will be facing a $5,452 fine. They say that there was a number of children who were also present, but they will not be fined, and they're also wanting to chase up people that clearly had fled the scene as well. So they are continuing to investigate this. But we also heard not long ago from Josh Burns, who's the federal member for McNamara down here as well, and he was basically reiterating those comments as well about the fact that this was a tight-knit community.
Yes.
And a wider community, and that, so many people are looking on this as being appalling. They were the words that he used. It was absolutely appalling, and he said this is the time when, despite the fact that we've all been through this and we're sick to the back teeth of being in this situation, that we have to dig deep and we have to follow those public health orders, because we want to all collectively get out of this lockdown as quickly as possible. And the potential of a super spreader event like this is not the way to go about it.
Good to talk to you, Stephanie. Thank you for that update.
Thanks.
Stephanie Ferry there, ABC reporter. Katie has called in from South Caulfield. Good morning, Katie.
Oh, good morning, Virginia. Thank you very much. Look, I just simply want to echo what has already been said. I'm absolutely disgusted by the behaviour of these few. And I believe that, we need to not go so softly. Personally, $5,000 fine is ridiculous. Trying to enforce that, get that money out of these communities, because they do not actually have a lot of money, is, again, too softly. I reckon a night in the lockup would have been a far better thing. They believe that the Mashiach or the Messiah is going to come and save them from COVID and everything else. Let's see how that feels.
Oh, well that's let's not get too rough and extreme there with our language and the way that we're characterising one group. I'm at pains this morning to say that and to point out to you and remind you that there have been any number of community groups or individuals or families, even some really high-profile partners of footballers who have been caught out doing the wrong thing. So it's not just this community group or this part of the community. So just bear that in mind with the comments that we're making. But nonetheless, I totally accept that it's despairing to see this, particularly when at this stage, even though we're trying to vaccinate as quickly as we can, if we keep getting new clusters of infection, that just slows down the whole recovery. But I'm happy to keep and taking your calls as long as we can be sensitive to each other. 1300 222 774.
Good morning, Virginia. Yeah, look, I'm just starting to feel as though this is getting close to straw breaking camel's back kind of thing.
You mean the lockdown?
Yeah, there's been the two issues in Balaclava now. The one with the engagement party, and then this one that's gone on last night, and the abuse around it. There's the alleged things with the footballers' wives, and you were quite correct pointing out it's not just the Jewish community. There's things that happened with the Greek Orthodox and Muslims and that. And the anti-vax stuff. Now, I'm not a footballer's wife. I'm not any of the Orthodox religions. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. But then, when I see what I am as a father, and I'm desperately hanging to see my son in Melbourne.
No, everyone totally feels that and gets that. That's the frustration when you see again and again. When you see whether it might be a kids' party gathering down Bayside, or some other women gathering together and doing what they're doing off dinner plates, or this one down here. It is immensely frustrating. At the same time, John, as you say, lockdown is wearing thin, and I guess maybe there's a one human aspect of it just gets all too hard after a while. That is not to justify it at all, but I guess I'm just trying to hold two different contrasting points of view in your mind at the same time, which is always the challenge, that it's against the rules, but at the same time, humans are humans, and trying to square that circle is very, very hard.
Good morning, Melissa Brown with ABC News. Victoria has recorded 221 coronavirus cases overnight. Only 98 have been linked to known cases. It takes the state's active infections to more than 2,000. There were almost 37,000 vaccinations administered at state clinics yesterday. Police are continuing to investigate a religious gathering in Ripponlea in Melbourne's inner southeast. The gathering to celebrate Jewish New Year breached Victoria's lockdown restrictions. Police say all adults who attended will be fined $5,500. The local federal MP, Josh Burns, says it's disappointing.
Most people will be looking at these images going, this is appalling. And most people from within the Jewish community will be looking at these images going, this is appalling. And people have been doing the right thing. And I would just say that for this small number that's not, it's very disappointing.
The Jewish Community Council has expressed its strong disappointment and condemnation of those who breached lockdown. It says it's gone to great lengths to encourage the local community to follow the rules and to celebrate Jewish New Year at home. It says the actions of a few do not represent the vast majority of the community.